So I tried to do some research for this video, to try and format my own opinions on the DLC's ending, maybe figure out an interesting narrative to shape in the video, and I got nothing. The ending is quite abrupt. I think everyone will agree on that. I've seen it described as lackluster, disappointing, betraying, uninspired, but also thematic, insightful, true to the series. And it's honestly all of those things. To understand the ending, we need to take the Ring City's context into account. This isn't supposed to be a new ending. Dark Souls 3 ended in the kiln of the first flame, not the Ashen Wastes. Both entrances to the Ring City come before the final boss fight of the base game. We can argue about whether or not we time travel into the future to fight Gael, but from a gameplay perspective, that isn't the end. So hoping for a new, conclusive ending that answers our questions more than the original ending did doesn't really make sense. There is more to be learned from the Ring City, but it's not going to change how we end the game after the Soul of Cinder. If we look at Ashes of Ariandel, we can see what could have been expected from the Ring City. Ashes of Ariandel essentially represents a microcosm of the whole theme and story of Dark Souls. The Ring City gives a bit of a small closer to Ariandel's story. Ariandel had its own cyclical world that was being corrupted by its unnatural prolonging, and it ended with the player burning down the world, destroying it so a new one could take place, which is somewhat explained at the end of the Ring City. But this was all basically just a metaphor for the base game. The lore and characters of Ariandel were almost all new, and the DLC didn't really answer any pre-existing questions from the base game. Sure, Friede was one of Uria's sisters, and there were a few lines of dialogue about that, but it didn't really amount to much. The first DLC is a story parallel yet separate from the vanilla game. Looking at the Ring City, there's a similar theme of separate story. To be fair, the Ring City does do a better job of connecting with old lore. It at least takes place in the same world. But once again, most of the lore and story of the second DLC is either self-contained, connected with Ariandel, or only slightly referential of old lore. Midir, Halflight, the Judicators, Filianore, and especially Gael all fit into one of those three categories. Most of the stuff is new. Filianore technically is connected to Gwyn, but is essentially a completely new character. Midir and Halflight are 100% new. However, Midir does have strong connections with older dragons and the Abyss. And Gael is straight out of Ashes of Ariandel. The pygmies and the Ashen Wastes are really the only characters of old that we find a better insight to through this DLC. And none of that is necessarily bad. Obviously a new DLC should have new characters and stories. But with a whole new cast, we can't expect a ton of answers to old questions. Moving on to the actual ending, Gael and the Dark Soul. Our final boss is a slave who gets powered up off a blood protein shake. I can see how some could have expected something a bit more grand, especially since that protein shake was basically the namesake of the series, the Dark Soul. I talked about this in my previous lore video, but this fight is unexpectedly a really fitting one. I said I'm not sure how to feel about the ending as a whole, and that is still true, but to me this final boss fight is an amazing one. Gael is a nobody, and that's huge. Because unlike almost every other boss in the series, that means he's just like us. The Chosen Undead, the Bearer of the Curse, the Ashen One, those are all just fancy titles for nobodies. The Chosen Undead was probably one of millions of undead just like them. The name for the Bearer of the Curse literally just means somebody who got cursed. And this is in a land in which the big problem is that the same curse is afflicting everyone. And the Ashen One is only so because they failed. That's it. All we did to get our current mystical title is not succeed in linking the fire. It doesn't really sound like a mighty accomplishment to me. We always play as someone who could have been anyone, so that we can all really connect with our own character. We can make our character whoever we think he or she really ought to be or is. That's the role-playing part of this RPG. So this fight with Slave Knight Gael is a fight on equal footing. Two nobodies who have had the will and the drive to push forward and complete the task they set out to do in a world of mindless hollows. We have both seen the world crumble, and we've both gotten stronger. We've both made it to this last meeting where no one else stands. Maybe this is the future and truly all have died or been eaten by Gael, leaving only us two as the final living beings. Gael has consumed the Dark Soul to make sure that his lady, the painter in Ariandel, would be able to use his blood, now the blood of the Dark Soul, to finish her painting. But the Dark Soul has corrupted him, and we have to put him down. Maybe he knew we would be the one to do it. Whatever the case, his mind having left him, Gael is now berserk, and he rampages for the remaining part of the Dark Soul that rests in us. Once we defeat Gael, that's basically it. There's no cutscenes, not even a fade to black. We can go back to the painter in Ariandel and give her the blood of the Dark Soul. With that, we get her ending dialogue, and that's that. The end.
My thanks, Ashen One. With this will I paint a world. Please tell me thy name. I would name this painting after thee. My thanks. I will paint a world of that name. It will be a cold, dark, and very gentle place. And one day, it will make someone a goodly home.
Nothing more. It's abrupt, confusing. What are we supposed to do now? Shouldn't there be some kind of conclusion after the last boss fight in the last DLC of the last Dark Souls? I can never say what the intentions of the end of this DLC were, but what I can say is that the ending, for better or for worse, is very Dark Souls. Do you have a million more questions? Do you feel that you deserve a better explanation for all the crazy and expansive pieces of lore that have made up this series? Well then, welcome to Dark Souls. You'll fit right in. In one of my earlier videos, I said that I hoped we could get a little more closure because this was the last piece of Dark Souls content ever. But it looks like we got the usual treatment. The ending was almost not there, but we can look to the painter and see that there is something like an ending in her. She's making a new, peaceful world. Something almost every character in the Soulsborne franchise would benefit from. We don't know much more than that. It'll be cold and dark, but comforting. Because I view the canonical ending of the base game as the Age of Dark ending, the one where we have the Firekeeper stop the fire from being relinked, this DLC ending kind of just serves as a slight expansion on that. I probably shouldn't call it the Age of Dark ending, as that has some different connotations possibly. I think something more like ending the relinking of the First Flame. That's a pretty bad title for an ending, but it captures the idea of what I think the ending is, and that's stopping the relinking of the First Flame. Returning to the actual topic, the painter sounds like she's painting an age of no more linking of the First Flame. Maybe as we let the fire go out, the world crumbles. We do see this at the kiln of the First Flame. The world is falling apart and getting all mismatched. It might be up to the painter to construct the new world that will rise out of the ruins of this fading age. That seems reasonable and acceptable to me, but honestly it's just a theory. So this DLC's ending is essentially just a new dark world will be made. That's about it. One thing to note is that in the Ashen Wastes, before the fight, the sun shines brightly on the dunes. It does seem to be almost gone off the horizon, but it's clearly still there. If we look to the other direction, we see night looming, encroaching upon the enlightened realm, already covering most of the vast dunes. And after the fight, the sun is gone. The Age of Fire is over. The Age of Dark, or maybe Grey, or not linking the fire, whatever this new age is descending upon us. The Dark Soul, this series' namesake, is being used to make a new, cool, peaceful world. A world that will probably be devoid of all the elements that are so characteristic of this one, like the Dark Soul and the First Flame, the Abyss, and everything else. The painter names the painting after us. If not, she'll name it the Painted World of Ash. She wanted Gael to find a home in it. Even though he won't, maybe we will be able to. The only thing that carries over from the world of Dark Souls to this new world is us, the player, and this is a perfect metaphor for From Software moving forward. They end the world of this game, build a new game on the old world's remnants, and the only feature that remains completely the same through both of them is us, the players, who will almost surely check out whatever From has up next. Actually, over the course of writing this script, narrating it, and making this video, I think I'm pretty happy with this ending. Looking back at it, Dark Souls is over, and so the age we fought and died in so many times is over too. It's being replaced by something new that's built off the foundation of the old, something we're not quite sure of yet, but maybe in the future we'll find out. Very symbolic of From Software themselves. A peaceful ending to such a rage-inducing series. This was probably one of the more confusing videos I've done, even for Dark Souls. Trying to tie up loose ends and explaining the endings of this game is always a Herculean task lore-wise, so I appreciate all of you watching and hope you'll continue to stick around. I think I have a pretty cool idea for a video about Filianore coming up sometime in the near future. Be on the lookout for that, and if you want to stay up to date with my videos and stuff, you can head over to my Twitter. I sometimes update over there, and if there are more people expecting it, maybe I would update more. Thanks again for watching, and leave any of your own lore ideas in the comments below, or anything you think I should make a video on. Peace out, everyone. It's done!